Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. So we encourage you to use the chat to ask questions in English or French today at any time to the group or directly to any of the moderators in case you need any technical assistance. We'll be using Mentimeter today. You can use this on your phone, tablet, or laptop, and we'll provide instructions on how to access and use Mentimeter in a few minutes. QR codes and links that will be shared via the chat will be provided throughout the webinar for you to access resources and tools that we share today. And the webinar recording, presentation, and resources will also be shared by email. So to get us started, I'm excited to first turn things over to Bev Johnston, Division Chief in the Office of Population and Reproductive Health, Policy Evaluation and Communication Division at USAID. Bev, good morning, and over to you.
Thank you, Amanda, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. As Amanda noted, I'm Beverly Johnston, and I'm the Chief of the Policy Evaluation and Communication Division within USAID's Office of Population and Reproductive Health. I've been given the privilege today to welcome you to this breakthrough research webinar. Today's webinar is part of a series of capstone learning and sharing events as the project wraps up many successful years. As the chief of the division where the project is housed, I've been fortunate to learn from the project managers and leaders over the last 6 years. We are so proud of their accomplishments and are excited that they can share a few of their successes with us through webinars over the next several months. As we all know, what gets measured gets done. And that saying rings true for the family planning community and family planning programming. The more we know about capturing the family planning impact and outcomes of SBC programming through appropriate and accurate measures, the better health practitioners and program implementers can prioritize and invest in SBC approaches. Indeed, the Breakthrough Research Project recognized the variable effectiveness of SBC actions and how the determination of effectiveness often depended upon what was measured. So I look forward today to learning more about the steps the project took to build consensus for a learning agenda, to explore this measurement issue further, and how the project encouraged the use of a theory of change to monitor and evaluate SBC programs. We'll also learn about some recommended SBC indicators for family planning and useful tools to build local capacity. So I think next slide. So just as a little reminder, if you're not aware, the Breakthrough Research Project is USAID's flagship SBC research and evaluation project to drive the generation, packaging, and use of innovative SBC research to inform programming. So it's been implemented between August 2017 and we'll wrap up this July. It's led by Population Council in collaboration with their consortium partners, which include Tulane, Avenir Health, the Population Reference Bureau, and the Institute for Reproductive Health at Georgetown, as well as Ideas 42. So Breakthrough Research also works closely with its sister project, Breakthrough Action, also in the PEC division of USAID's Office of Pop and Reproductive Health, as well as a number of other implementing partners working on social behavior change and service delivery. The project's approach is to foster collaboration and shared learning, ensure SBC programs are based in what works, and elevate the impacts of evidence-based SBC programs and put evidence into practice. So this approach, as we know, is key to achieving USAID's localization and primary healthcare priorities, in addition to the family planning reproductive health priorities of the Office of Population and Reproductive Health. So I look forward to hearing from the project leadership and colleagues today as they share their expertise and experience. So thank you very much. And I think we're over to Laura. Laura, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Bev. I also want to welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Laura Reichenbach, and I'm the project director for Breakthrough Research. Breakthrough Research has had a productive 6 years, and I want to share a quick snapshot of a few of our metrics. The project has worked in 19 countries and engaged with 21 global and country partners on 53 research studies. This has resulted in 27 peer-reviewed publications and 94 citations to date across the 4 priority technical areas of the project: provider behavior change, SBC and the enabling environment, advancing SBC measurement, and costing for SBC. Today's webinar is the second of 4 complementary legacy and learning webinars. These webinars are intended for programmers, researchers, development partners, and donors, and are designed to be an interactive learning opportunity. Please join us for the full complement of this legacy and learning series. More information will be shared at the end of today's session. And welcome back to those of you who joined us last month for our first legacy and learning webinar on provider behavior change and SBC approaches to improving quality of care in family planning. If you missed it, you can use the link in the chat to access the recording, PBC resources, and webinar slide deck. For this webinar, we'll highlight evidence, insights, and learnings from the past 6 years from Breakthrough Research's work to advance SBC measurement to support and strengthen family planning programs. We'll also share resources and evidence-based practical tools you can use to strengthen SBC measurement, evaluation, and research. First, we'll start by briefly setting the scene for SBC measurement in family planning. Next, through a series of short presentations, we'll share some of Breakthrough Research's state-of-the-art evidence and SBC measurement tools you can use that the project has produced over the past 6 years to advance and strengthen SBC measurement. We'll then share a call to action for programmers and implementers, researchers, donors, and communities of practice, particularly those focused on measurement for family planning. What can you, in your role, do next as we look to the future of SBC measurement to support family planning programs? I'll now turn it over to Amanda Calamar, the Technical Director for Breakthrough Research. Amanda, over to you.
Thanks so much, Laura. As mentioned at the start of this webinar, we'll be using Mentimeter throughout today as a way to hear from you. If you joined us for the first webinar in our series, this will be very familiar to you. And for those of you that are new to the webinar series today, you can access Mentimeter through your phone or laptop. If you're using your phone, you can use the QR code on the screen. Scanning it will take you directly to our page on Mentimeter. And on your phone or laptop, you can also go to menti.com and enter the code 22986328, and this will also take you to our page on Mentimeter. We'll give everyone a minute to get there, and once you're there, if you can click the thumbs up on the page it brings you to, that will let us know how many people have successfully connected to Mentimeter. Great, I'm seeing lots of thumbs up. Hopefully people are making their way to Mentimeter right now. Fantastic, okay. So now that we're here, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm gonna go to the next screen to kick off our first question. So first, please let us know where you're joining this webinar from today by placing the blue dot near your geographic location and pressing submit. You'll see the results live on the screen here. Fantastic. It's great to see colleagues from so many different places across the globe. So next, As a first question to start us off, do you use SBC approaches as part of your work? Please let us know if yes, you do, no, you don't, or if you don't know. And you'll see the results live on the screen here once you press that submit button. Okay, great. So lots of people using SBC approaches in their work. So thinking about that, as we move to our next question, how challenging do you find it to measure SBC approaches? So you can use the sliding scale to let us know if you find it extremely challenging, if you find it not at all challenging, or somewhere in between. Okay, so we're falling somewhere in the middle, maybe closer to the extremely challenging side. So this is great to know, and we hope after today, we'll share some tools you can use that will help us move a little bit more towards the right-hand side and have this be a little bit less challenging. And finally, we'd like to know a bit about who is joining us today. So do you consider yourself to be a program designer or implementer, to be a researcher or M&E officer, or are you a donor or a stakeholder or policymaker? Great. We have a great mix of people in the room, so thanks so much for that. And thank you all for your participation in this first Mentimeter. We look forward to your continued participation using Mentimeter again in a few minutes and throughout the webinar, so keep that close by. Let's now set the scene for SBC measurement and family planning programs and dive into the evidence. Today, we'll be sharing just a selection of our work over the past 6 years, organized around key messages we'd like to leave you with. The links that we provide throughout the webinar can be used to go deeper into the evidence and the tools shared. We'll also share a link at the end of the webinar to a collection of a larger body of breakthrough research's work on SBC measurement. A growing body of evidence suggests that SBC interventions improve family planning outcomes, such as directly increasing contraceptive uptake or increasing contraceptive use through pathways that address intermediate determinants such as attitudes around family planning, and yet barriers still exist to SBC inclusion and investments. Some SBC interventions are more effective than others, and the estimated effectiveness of SBC interventions can vary depending on the measures we use to assess them. The measurement of SBC interventions and SBC implementation science approaches can also be important in addressing implementation questions around scale-up and program replication. A first key message for today. SBC approaches can support family planning programs, and the standardized measurement of these approaches, guided by a defined theory of change, is critical to understanding their effectiveness and contributing to their success. To dive a little deeper into this key message, we'll highlight some of the evidence that breakthrough research has generated over the past 6 years, outlining the importance of SBC measurement and the need for strengthened SBC measures. You'll hear from those on the breakthrough research team involved in developing these resources, and they will be available at the end of the webinar to answer questions. First, over to Senyukta.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, colleagues. My name is Sanyukta Mathur, and I'm a social and behavioral scientist at the Population Council. I've had the pleasure of serving as the technical advisor on gender and youth on the project and led the process towards developing research and learning agendas on 2 programmatic themes that emerge as key priorities in the SBC field: provider behavior change and integrated SBC programs. At the start of the project, in collaboration with USAID and building on past efforts, we took an intentional, consensus-driven approach to develop global SBC research and learning agendas. We engaged over 190 stakeholders in this process, including researchers, implementing partners, service delivery organizations, and donors. The goal of developing these RLAs was to help guide decision-making across sectors, foster collective learning, reduce duplication of efforts, and maximize the impact of research and programmatic investments. Our starting point was a desk review, a review of reviews, focused on already synthesized evidence on SBC programmatic research or evaluations from low and middle income countries. In this review, we focused on USAID's key global health SBC technical areas, reviewing documents from 2012 to 2018, tapping both peer-reviewed and programmatic literature. A total of 160 review documents were collected, and explicitly stated research gaps were then extracted and tagged by health area. This was followed by a series of expert consultations focused on validating the desk review results and pinpointing and prioritizing cross-cutting themes, SBC knowledge gaps, and generating research questions to enhance SBC programming in complex real-world settings. Measurement was identified as a clear evidence gap from both the desk review, as shown in the table, as well as the consultations with experts and stakeholders, as shown in the word cloud. From the desk review, we found a persistently noted gap was the lack of consistency and alignment in the indicators used to measure the same outcomes on mediating factors. For example, some of the measurement gaps that hindered the evidence base on family planning programming included inconsistent measures used as outcomes in assessing contraceptive use, inadequate measures of contraceptive discontinuation, and limited or consistent measures to assess male involvement in family planning decision-making. It is important to note that these knowledge gaps are not mutually exclusive. Take, for instance, the links between effectiveness and measurement. You need good measures for effective evaluations. Similarly, there's a link between theory and measurement. One of our consultation participants articulated the challenge as follows. He said, "We need to base research and interventions in theories of change. There's a lot of retrospective grounding in theory, which usually creates measurement problems." The RLAs for advancing integrated SBC programming and for advancing PBC programming respond to this identified evidence gap by articulating a set of research and learning questions around measurement and effectiveness, where measurement is a key component. Without consistency in defining what we are measuring and how we're measuring it, it is challenging to look across SBC efforts to extract what is working or not. These identified evidence gaps and accompanying research and learning agenda questions have helped guide breakthrough researchers' work over the past 6 years to advance SBC measurement. Thank you for listening. Please scan the QR code to learn more about our research and learning agendas. Thank you.
Given the identified evidence needs just shared, we know that applying tools to understand who SBC programs are reaching, how they are reaching them, with what content, and what changes they are producing is critical for effective measurement of SBC in family planning programs. And so, Breakthrough Research has developed several SBC measurement tools you can use. We'll next share some brief dives into SBC measurement tools that you can use in support of your family planning programs and outcomes through a short presentation aimed at highlighting what the tool is, why it's needed, and how you can use it, followed by interactive feedback through Mentimeter and a short question and answer discussion. You'll again hear from members of the Breakthrough Research team, and they'll spend a few minutes after each short presentation reacting to the feedback that you'll give through Mentimeter. First, over to you, Leanne.
Hello, my name is Leanne Doherty, and I will be sharing an example of an SBC measurement tool focused on how to use a theory of change to monitor and evaluate SBC programs. In the Breakthrough Research How-To Brief, we highlight how behavior change theory can be incorporated into an SBC program's theory of change to illustrate how or why a desired change is expected to occur. We emphasize that behavior change theory can be used to guide the identification of behavioral determinants that influence program goals and objectives. Using evidence generated through the application of a theory of change, program managers and research monitoring and evaluation staff can identify and collect robust theory-driven evidence to guide programs. How-to guide users are guided through 6 steps to use a theory of change to monitor and evaluate SBC programs, with details and example applications along the way. Step 1. Understand factors influencing priority behaviors targeted by the SBC program using behavioral theory. Step 2. Build a program theory of change. Step 3. Select meaningful SBC indicators. Step 4. Monitor SBC implementation. Step 5. Evaluate SBC implementation effectiveness and impact. And Step 6. Communicate findings. Through this process, users will have the chance to explore examples of theories of change that are underpinned by behavioral theory. For example, this theory of change from the West Africa Breakthrough Action Program, Merci Monero, includes elements of the theory of planned behavior and highlights behavioral determinants such as attitudes, social norms, and self-efficacy as drivers of the program's intended health outcomes. The guide also provides examples of how to operationalize measurement of these behavioral determinants by defining the behaviors, knowledge, attitudes, self-efficacy, behavioral intent, and norms the program intends to change. Finally, the How-To Guide provides guidance on the process of integrating the theory of change into an M&E plan by first using a theory of change process at the design stage to identify the important behavioral determinants that should be addressed. Second, by selecting indicators for the M&E plan that measures exposure to the program, determinants of behavior, and behavioral outcomes. Third, by proposing the addition of introducing qualitative studies, such as in-depth interviews or focus group discussions, to complement routine monitoring and provide more explanatory evidence. And finally, by advocating that programs share what works so interventions can be improved. You can learn more and access the how-to brief by scanning the QR code to access the web link. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Leanne. And now we'd like to hear from all of you again using Mentimeter. So please go back to where you left off on Mentimeter, or if you need to rejoin us, please go to menti.com and enter the code 22986328, or use the QR code to take you to Mentimeter. Great. Thank you for hitting the thumbs up to let us know that you're with us. So now that we've heard about how to use a theory of change to monitor and evaluate SBC programs, first, a pulse check. Do you regularly use a behavioral theory of change to guide the M&E of family planning programs? Great. Seeing an interesting split between those of you who sometimes do and those of you who don't but would like to. So hopefully the how-to guide that Leanne just shared will help you to do just that. So now with this in mind, in a short sentence, can you tell us from your perspective, what is the most challenging thing about using a theory of change for M&E? I'm seeing lots of complicated. Great. Fantastic. So Leanne, and I think you're with us. So I'm hoping we can spend just a minute. I'm seeing a lot of challenges come in around selecting the indicators or sort of understanding what to measure in that full pathway. And so can you talk just a little bit more about how using that theory of change and the how-to guide can help make this a little bit less complicated when thinking about what it is you might want to measure?
Yeah, thank you. And this is really great just to get a sense of what people's experience has been with using a theory of change for SBC programs and kind of where they're at. I agree, it can be a complicated process, particularly when you're bringing in different elements of programs. And in some ways, it can be different programs coming together as one to sort of unpack all those different factors and activities that are contributing to change. And there can be a lot of discussion and debate about how the pathways sort of unfold and where you may need to tweak language or arrows in terms of directionality of how things come together. But I think the process of doing that and sort of working together as a team to figure out, what those determinants are and how they work together to lead to change can be really informative in terms of thinking about where to put your emphasis programmatically. And bringing in the theoretical component can also really help to understand where your weaknesses are, where you need to put more emphasis. And so I hope the how-to guide will be helpful to those that are interested in using a theory of change in their SBC programs to kind of unpack what that process looks like and to give you some ideas of types of measures that you can include that have a SBC theory component to them that can help to better inform your program.
Great. Thank you so much, Leanne, and thank you to everyone for your active participation and great feedback. Please keep Mentimeter close by. We'll use it again in just a few minutes. And next over to Martha to share Breakthrough Research's 12 recommended SBC indicators for family planning.
Hello, I'm Martha Silva from Tulane University, and I am the Data Strategist and Innovation Team Lead for Breakthrough Research. We know that SBC measurement enables programs to engage in continuous learning and improvement, as well as demonstrate how SBC interventions improve desired outcomes. SBC measurement, along with good research design, also provides evidence of SBC's effectiveness. This can then be used to mobilize further investment into SBC approaches to support family planning programs. In this tool we propose 12 SBC indicators that programs can consider adopting to monitor and evaluate SBC programs. In thinking about which SBC indicators to recommend, we used the ideational model of SBC interventions, used extensively by SBC practitioners, which describes stages of the innovation decision process prior to behavior change. We selected indicators from the SBC Indicator Bank for Family Planning and Service Delivery that were aligned with this model of behavior change to ensure that the 12 recommendations represented measurement of exposure to SBC programming, measurement of intermediate determinants, and measures of intention and behavioral outcomes. While the SBC Indicator Bank did not include a cost-related indicator, experts recognized the importance of collecting cost-related data to support advocating for SBC investments. Measuring exposure to SBC programming enables us to understand the extent to which beneficiaries are exposed to SBC approaches. In alignment with the ideational model, we recommend the 3 indicators you see here. All of these recommended indicators are also being shared through a link in the chat. Measuring intermediate determinants enables us to understand the factors contributing to behavioral outcomes. Here, we recommend 5 indicators. Measures in this process include knowledge, attitudes, emotional determinants such as self-efficacy, and social dimensions such as discussions of family planning with one's spouse and friends. Prior to adopting the proposed 12 indicators, program implementers can review formative research to select the ideational components most relevant to the country and programmatic context. Measuring intention and behavioral outcomes enables us to determine if the behavior has changed, and we recommend 3 indicators here. And finally, measuring cost enables us to understand the resources used and resources needed to reach a target audience, and we recommend 1 indicator for this. To accompany these 12 recommended indicators and help audiences use these indicators in their family planning programs, Breakthrough Research also developed indicator reference sheets. Indicator reference sheets help program implementers use and adapt indicators to measure program successes and failures, ensure data quality, and help users correctly interpret data produced by an organization. We're also sharing in the chat a link to related work that the project did to strengthen SBC measurement and evaluation for family planning in Francophone West Africa, where we mapped investments and indicators in use in 4 countries to identify strengths and gaps in current approaches to SBC measurement and propose additional indicators for incorporation into SBC monitoring systems to fill some of the identified gaps.
Thanks so much, Martha. And now we'll take a few minutes to hear from you again using Mentimeter. So please go back to where you left off on Mentimeter, or if you need to rejoin us, please go to menti.com and enter the code on the screen, or use the QR code to take you to Mentimeter. Wonderful. Thanks so much for hitting that thumbs up to let us know that we're back over on Mentimeter with everybody. So now that we've just heard about the 12 recommended SBC indicators for family planning, a first question to everybody. So do you see yourself using these indicators in your work? Great. It looks like a lot of you will use them right away. So we hope the resources we just shared on the indicators and the technical reference sheets will help you do just that. And for those of you who said yes, maybe later, bookmark those resources so you can come back to them. And next, so we can get a sense of any potential measurement gaps that are out there. Can you place a dot next to the type of indicator that you use most frequently as part of your M&E in programming? Do you measure exposure indicators? Are you often measuring intermediate determinant indicators? Do you include intention and behavioral outcomes, or are you measuring cost indicators? Great. It looks like there's a pretty good spread across exposure and intermediate and intention and behavioral. And I think, Martha, I think you're on the line. I think there's not very many, if any, blue dots on the cost side. I wonder if you could just take a minute to reflect sort of what these blue dots are showing about where we have measurement and where we might not.
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, I think it's not very surprising. I think throughout the Breakthrough Research Project, what we have learned is that there is. So I used to think about cost data as being useful for cost effectiveness analysis, and it's not always that you do cost effectiveness analysis. But I think we have a lot more uses for cost data than just looking at effectiveness and cost effectiveness. And so I think that some of our breakthrough research colleagues would really encourage us all to think about collecting cost-related indicators, especially because we all have them. We all have costs related to our projects, and it's useful data for planning purposes. And so maybe a call to consider systematizing cost data. And I think Breakthrough Research has tools for that as well. Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks, Martha. And as you mentioned, and if you all are interested in learning a little bit more about costing and cost effectiveness for SBC for family planning, we'll provide a link at the end of the webinar. Please join us with our fourth webinar in this series around costing for family planning SBC. We'll provide more information on that at the end of the webinar. So now we'll go back over to Leanne to tell us about some exciting SBC measurement learning courses.
Hello, my name is Leanne Doherty, and I will be sharing information about the SBC measurement and learning courses. Breakthrough Research is collaborating with Breakthrough Action to offer social and behavior change practitioners and researchers a suite of blended learning capacity strengthening e-courses and toolkits. The courses are self-guided and include a pre-post test, instructional video content, PowerPoints, knowledge check quizzes, and extra assignments and opportunities to further the discussion with other SBC professionals. The objective of these courses and toolkits is to improve the capacity among SBC practitioners and researchers to use SBC approaches to identify and apply solutions to challenges. The courses are available in English and French to reach a broad audience. 2 e-courses available through this platform include one focused on monitoring and evaluating of SBC approaches. This course describes how to build an SBC theory of change, how to select meaningful SBC indicators, how to monitor SBC implementation, and how to determine if the SBC program reached the desired outcome. A second course available on the platform focuses on how to measure SBC program or campaign exposure. This course aims to help build a better understanding of SBC program or campaign exposure. It provides examples of SBC exposure questions and data sources, and shows how to use exposure data to inform your SBC program or campaign. We will explore the e-course Measuring SBC Program or Campaign Exposure a bit further. In the learning course, we walk users through how to understand different types of SBC exposure measures. For example, we can measure SBC program reach. Reach measures the extent to which the program or campaign reaches the intended audience. An example of a question that addresses program reach is how many decision makers, local or religious leaders, participated in SBC program trainings. Or we can consider audience recognition, which is also a type of awareness of the program or campaign. Recognition measures if the respondent can provide an affirmative response when prompted with a campaign element. An example question that measures recognition is, can you complete this campaign slogan? Each of these different exposure measures can be used to help programs better understand who they are reaching, if the audience understands the message, and how they feel about the message. The course also explains different types of data sources that can be used to capture exposure data and the pros and cons. For example, project-tailored surveys may allow for the collection of data on specific measures, but may be costly to implement. Similarly, qualitative interviews may be useful to assess comprehension and message reaction in depth that supports program learning, but is not generalizable to the entire target population. Collecting SBC program or campaign exposure data can be used to determine if the program reached the intended audience. Also to determine how to budget for your SBC program based on the desired number of people reached, to assess whether the audience understands the program, to assess the audience reaction to the SBC program or campaign, and to assess whether the program had an impact on the audience reached. And to illustrate how SBC exposure data can be used, we provide an example which shows the percentage of respondents who are exposed to a radio campaign. In this example, we are able to assess if the campaign's priority audiences were being reached. Since the campaign aimed to address both women and men, we assessed radio listenership to see if this would be a strong channel for sharing campaign messages. Here we see the exposure data suggests that radio listenership skewed male, with about a third of female respondents reporting not listening to the radio at all. These findings suggest a multi-channel approach beyond radio is necessary to reach women of reproductive age. You can access the Learning Capacity Strengthening e-courses and toolkits by scanning the QR code to access the web link. Thank you.
Thanks so much again, Leanne. And now a few more questions to hear from you all using Mentimeter. So please go back to where you left off, or if you need to rejoin us, go to menti.com and enter the code, or use the QR code to take you to Mentimeter. Great, it looks like most people are back with us. So now that we've heard about the SBC measurement learning courses that are available to all of you, a first question: have you ever used SBC exposure data to inform your program? Great. It looks like we have responses in all the categories. And for those of you that have or that want to, we hope that these learning courses help you to do so or help to strengthen that measurement of that exposure data to inform your programming. So next, thinking about that, in a short sentence, tell us what the biggest challenge is from your perspective when measuring SBC exposure. Great. These are some great challenges. And Leanne, since I know you're online, I wonder if you might want to take a minute to respond to some of these challenges. It looks like there's some consistency around sort of time and cost, and then also some challenges around sort of contamination from other programs or accounting for attribution to the program you're trying to measure. Over to you to react to some of these challenges.
And yeah, I think there are some great questions and points that are being brought up. I think one of the things that was really interesting about putting together this exposure course is that there are some techniques that you can apply, and these are illustrated throughout the courses about how to kind of minimize some of the biases that might come into play when measuring exposure. Some techniques include sort of if you include something they call ringers, which is maybe the name of a campaign that isn't actually out there, so you can sort of detect where there may be misunderstandings. There's also different types of recall questions you can ask. You can ask sort of spontaneous recall to see if people have heard of it without any sort of prompting. And you can also ask them to sort of fill in the blank of a campaign slogan, which can really illustrate sort of the depth of which they've heard and understood the program. So there's some great examples throughout the course that can help to strengthen your measurement of SBC exposure. And I think there's also still sort of outstanding challenges in terms and sort of it's kind of a mix in terms of sometimes you have to weigh the pros and cons of how you select a measure based on what you're doing. So it may not be a perfect fit. For example, recall period, you may want a shorter period or a longer period depending on the duration of the program, which can affect how much people remember or have had a chance to hear of the campaign. So all of those sort of considerations are illustrated throughout the course and can give you some just some additional points to consider when thinking about selecting your exposure measures for SBC programs.
Great, thanks, Leanne, and thanks to all of you for sharing your feedback and your thoughts. It really is so nice to hear from so many of you. As usual, please keep Mentimeter close by. We'll use it again in a few minutes. Now that we have these SBC measurement tools you can use, it's important to also recognize that program designers and evaluators can benefit from SBC insights gained when tried and true research and evaluation methods have new applications in the family planning field. We'd next like to share some highlights of how breakthrough research has applied tried and true research and evaluation methodologies to uncover new SBC insights for family planning. These examples will just be key takeaways, and you can dive deeper into these methodological applications and learn more through the links that will be shared in the chat. Through these presentations, we hope to encourage all of you to think about the different ways we can apply established research, evaluation, and measurement thinking in innovative ways for new discovery.
Hello, my name is Nicole Bellows, and I'll be sharing an example of our work with audience segmentation. Audience segmentation has long been a tried and true methodology in the field of marketing. It's used to identify subgroups within a target audience and deliver tailored messages to those subgroups. Audience segmentation in family planning programs has historically been based on demographic characteristics. At Breakthrough Research, we wanted to go beyond demographic segmentation and explore psychographic factors, sometimes referred to as behavioral determinants, to generate more nuanced audience profiles for maternal and reproductive health behaviors. Using data from household survey conducted in Niger from April and May 2021, we collected information from women of reproductive age on their knowledge, attitudes, norms, self-efficacy, and partner communication related to family planning and maternal health behaviors. We then applied an analytic technique called latent class analysis to generate empirically defined audience subgroups based on patterns of responses across study participants in the survey data. Once we generated the audience subgroups, we were then able to test associations between the subgroups and key outcomes. Here we share 3 examples of personas generated from our audience profiles. We identified Aissatou, who is less likely to use ANC services in a facility in Niger. Aissatou is slightly younger, less educated, and poorer than our study sample. She has fewer positive attitudes, low agreement with supportive social norms, and lower self-efficacy compared to the overall study sample. Bintu is more likely to use a health facility for health delivery services. She is generally less educated and poorer than our study sample. However, Bintu has strong behavioral determinants for attitudes and partner communication, but scores more lower on social norms, suggesting her community environment may not be favorable to delivering in a facility. Finally, Fatou is more likely to use family planning in Niger. Fatou is a young, educated woman who is able to speak to her partner about family planning methods and knows where to find them. In a traditional society such as Niger, where the median age at first birth is below 18, young women such as Fatou can serve as a positive deviant who can influence users who are more resistant to adopt FP methods. Breakthrough Research has prepared a programmatic research brief summarizing our work with audience segmentation. We have also recorded a webinar session, Finding the Right Fit, using segmentation approaches to help shape your social and behavior change programming, which digs deeper into segmentation methodologies as a set of evidence-based approaches that facilitate a more in-depth and nuanced understanding of the individual and contextual drivers of behavior. The webinar presenters explore how segmentation approaches are applied to current SBC programs across various health areas and with different audiences, and the way these approaches can help the design and evaluation of SBC approaches. You can find out more information by scanning these QR codes to access the web links. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Audience segmentation is increasingly growing in popularity in the family planning field, and this is a great example of how to apply it and use the methodology in new ways. We hope you all find these resources useful. Next, over to Martha.
Next, I'll be talking to you about social listening, which is a tool that you can use to leverage internet-based data, such as social media posts, blogs, and forums to understand people's opinions and perceptions about topics that are relevant to your social and behavior change campaigns. To get us started, I wanted to reflect on why we should care about data coming from online sources, such as social media. Social media use has been growing steadily all over the world, and as you can see in this graph, in 2020 there were 3.6 billion social media users worldwide, and is still growing. Social listening is often used as an umbrella term for tools and approaches to gain insights about what people are viewing, what they're liking, what they're chatting and commenting about online. And I'd like to differentiate between social media monitoring and social media listening. Social media listening is what you may think of as qualitative analysis, but with a huge data set of online content. It lets you answer questions such as who is messaging and where are these conversations occurring, what are the attitudes, perceptions, and behaviors that are expressed, and what misinformation is circulating, and what can we learn from all of this information. Social media monitoring is often used to track a campaign or a brand and uses quantitative metrics to answer questions such as what is the awareness and the level of engagement with a topic or campaign or brand, what is the volume of conversation around a particular topic, and what is the sentiment of conversation related to this topic. Breakthrough Research's experience with using social listening and social media monitoring as part of a suite of evaluation approaches has shown us that when SBC programs' target audience has a significant online presence, these are great tools for formative research and to track misinformation, opinions, and perceptions about a particular topic of interest, such as family planning. Social media monitoring has allowed us to create rapid and periodic feedback loops with our implementation partners that contribute to programmatic decision-making. We also see the potential for using social listening as part of an evaluation strategy. Used in conjunction with other evaluation approaches, we think social listening can contribute to assessing potential for a campaign's impact, especially when you're able to triangulate the data with other evaluation methodologies. Here's an applied example of how Breakthrough Research used social listening. Social listening allows us to go from social media posts like the one that you see on screen and analyze these posts to gain insights on what is being talked about and how it's being talked about. We do this through bigram analysis as one of many social listening analytic tools. A bigram analysis measures how often words occur next to each other in text, which allows you to identify thematically what types of conversations are occurring. Breakthrough Research has developed several tools that family planning programs can use to gather information about target audiences' knowledge, attitudes, and exposure to SBC interventions. The first brief is called Informing Social and Behavior Change Programs Using Social Listening and Social Monitoring, and it provides an overview of social listening and social media monitoring and explains how these methods can be important tools for collecting information about target audiences. The second is a how-to guide that extends this practical guidance on using social listening and social media monitoring tools to inform SBC programs with applied examples and lessons learned, and they can be accessed through this QR code.
Thanks so much, Martha. And again, we'll have a few more questions to hear from you all using Mentimeter. So please go back to where you left off on Mentimeter, or if you need to rejoin us, go to menti.com and enter the code, or use the QR code to take you to Mentimeter. Wonderful. It looks like we're all rejoining Mentimeter. So now that we just heard about some applications of research and evaluation methods to different SBC approaches, the first question to you all is a pulse check. Could social listening help to inform your work? Great. It looks like overwhelmingly the answer is yes, which isn't surprising given, as Martha showed in the first part of her presentation, how prevalent social media is in so many of the places where our programs are. So next, we'd like to hear a little bit about what you all have been doing. And so in a short sentence or in a few words, tell us what evaluation methods you've applied to SBC approaches in your work recently. Great. Such a diverse set of methodologies being applied, which is wonderful to see. And we do hope that some of the resources we shared today around audience segmentation and social listening and social monitoring give you a few more tools in your toolbox as you think about different evaluation methods you might want to apply to your work going forward. Wonderful. Great to see all of this. So thank you again for your active participation. Keep Mentimeter close by. We'll use it one more time in just a few minutes. Thank you again for all of your participation for Mentimeter. Now that we've shared some of the state-of-the-art evidence and tools you can use, let's look forward to the future and what we can do to continue to strengthen SBC measurement for family planning. A call to action for everyone today. Future SBC approaches to strengthen family planning programs should commit to standardized, robust measurement to enable effectiveness evaluations that support continued investments in evidence-based SBC programs. In particular, to help fill the gaps in measurement, SBC programs can ensure the inclusion of standardized indicators of behavioral determinants and behaviors in their results framework, using a behavioral theory of change to guide their M&E efforts, and go beyond a focus on output level indicators. Service delivery programs that incorporate SBC approaches and those communities of practice with a focus on measurement should promote the use of standardized measures and should monitor and evaluate these SBC efforts using established measurement tools, such as the 12 recommended SBC indicators for family planning. Researchers should continue to use existing SBC indicators and measurement tools and encourage the inclusion of modules that collect behavioral determinant data in surveys, including large-scale surveys, and build the capacity of implementers and policymakers for data use of behavioral determinant data. And last, but certainly not least, donors should commit to investing in robust evaluation and standardized measurement of behavioral determinants and exposure to SBC approaches in family planning programs as a way to address global data equity issues and data gaps so that scaled programs can be informed by the evidence they need. So with these calls in mind, we'll spend the next few minutes with some reflections on how to advance these calls. And so we are thrilled to have Jason Bremner, Family Planning 2030's Data and Measurement Senior Director, join us for this. Jason, could you reflect on why FP 2030 thinks SBC measurement is important, how you see strengthened SBC measurement contributing to FP 2030's goal, and what the new hubs might want to be thinking about in terms of what they can do to drive this forward?
Thanks, Amanda, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, all. It's a pleasure to join you all with this perspective from FP 2030. I've been with the Family Planning Partnership, both FP 2020 and FP 2030, for many years now, 7 or 8 years, and I've seen the evolution of the partnership, of the commitments to the partnership. Today, in FP 2030, there are more than 30 countries and more than 80 organizations that have made commitments to FP 2030. And that's really commitments to expanding family planning methods, improving service delivery, improving the enabling environment, increasing financing for family planning, and changing social norms, attitudes, and behaviors around family planning. We have analyzed the country commitments, and we've seen that the majority of countries have made commitments to both service delivery improvements, financing increases, as I mentioned, but critically, social behavior change programs. And I think this is a change from our FP 2020 era. We're seeing more complex, detailed commitments and a focus on provider attitudes, community and faith leaders, support for family planning, and social norms that are supportive of people's choices, and individuals' knowledge and attitudes, their norms and agency. But the SBC commitments, unlike many of the other commitments around service delivery, around financing, don't seem to have as specific measurable goals. And I think that at the base of this is what I saw in the Mentimeter at the beginning of this webinar, and that is that people are unsure of how to measure, what indicators to use. There hasn't been clear aligned guidance on measurement of SBC programs. So I think this call to action is critical for FP 2030 commitment makers. And I think our effort with the regional hubs will be to support commitment makers to achieve their commitment objectives. And that's going to mean technical assistance, both on how to do programming, but also critically on how to measure whether that programming has been delivered successfully and whether the outcomes are supporting changes in social norms, attitudes, behavior, and increased agency. So we believe, and my experience is from past recommendations on measurement, that unfortunately a webinar doesn't take it far enough. And we're here as FP 2030 to try to transfer this knowledge, the great tools, briefs, and other methods to family planning decision makers, programmers. And our hope is that the regional hubs will give us a basis for doing that over the next decade. Critical to that will be training through focal point workshops, technical assistance directly to countries and programs, and working with all of you who are doing SBC programming and research to ensure that these recommendations and this call to action gets implemented. So thank you to all of those who have been working to put this webinar together, but actually thank you for the many years of work, I believe since 2017, on coming to this point on recommended indicators. It's long overdue in our community, and I think there's much more work to do. So thank you, Amanda.
Thanks so much, Jason, for those really insightful reflections. And we look forward to our continued collaboration with FP 2030 to make sure that these tools and resources get into all the hands of all the people that need them. So a final visit to Mentimeter for today. So as usual, please go back to where you left off on Mentimeter, or if you need to rejoin us, go to menti.com, enter the code, or scan the QR code. And so for a final feedback from you all as we enter our discussion section of this webinar. In one word, and I know one word can be really challenging, but in one word, what do you hope is next for SBC measurement for family planning? It's great to watch this word cloud change by the second as you all let us know what you hope is next for SBC measurement. I know this word cloud is dynamic and is changing quite a bit, but as you sort of see some of those bigger words that come out around dissemination, standardization, resources, and clarity, Laura, I wonder if you might take a minute from your perspective as project director of Breakthrough Research to reflect on what our audience today hopes is next for SBC measurement for family planning based on this ever-changing dynamic word cloud.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. And this is really exciting to sort of see the word cloud still forming and coalescing around several key terms. And I think it's interesting to reflect on this as we also reflect on the last 6 years and to Sanyukta's presentation on the research and learning agendas. I think there I think the standardization, which is like seems to be the coalescing a lot around standardization. I think that's sort of a clarion call that we have been thinking about and been hearing about, and really as a project with the SBC indicators and the reference sheets, trying to move that conversation forward. So I'm glad to see that really seems to resonate with people, and also to Jason's point as well. And thank you, Jason, for those remarks. I think that we have been thinking about this and really working a lot in terms of, as you've seen today, developing practical tools that people can use and adapt and apply. And I think as I look at these, I think a lot of the tools help to do that. I think what is fantastic, though, the other thing I want to point out is dissemination, because I think the knowledge sharing of experiences and moving this conversation forward through platforms like the Data Hub, FP 2030, and the Data Hubs, I think is critical. So I'll stop there, but I think it's really great to see all these great thoughts in terms of the word cloud. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura, and thanks to all of you for your participation throughout the webinar in Mentimeter. We'll use these results to guide our discussion with the presenters that you've heard from today. So if you have a question about what's been shared, and I know there's been a couple of them that have come through, but if you have a question, please do post it in the chat. We'll answer as many questions as we can and follow up with answers to any questions that we're not able to get to today. So please do go ahead and put anything in the chat that you've been curious about. And so I want to start with a first question around, Martha, around your presentation related to social listening and social media monitoring. And the question came in that says, social media content changes by the second. How does one implement social listening? Won't it be far too random?
It does indeed change by the second. So, and that is one of the things that I think is really exciting about social listening. The other thing that is extremely exciting is that even though internet-based content is very dynamic, it also stays. And what I mean by this is that you can look retrospectively for what people were talking about 5 years ago versus 4 years ago versus 3, etc. And so one of the ways that we've been using social listening is actually doing this retrospective analysis of how conversations are changing around a particular topic. One of the pieces of work that we did was specifically in Nigeria, looking at gender-related discourse, gender-based violence. And I think you can really find some very interesting trends, particularly looking at what triggers conversations, what triggers shifts. We had the global #MeToo movement that really shifted conversations in many settings. And so even though these conversations are really dynamic, I don't know that random is the word I would use, because you can trace how things are shifting or what potential triggers are helping some of these conversational shifts. And so I do think it's a very exciting tool. I probably don't have enough time to talk to you about how to do it, but please look at the guide and reach out if you want to chat about it some more. Thank you.
Thanks, Martha. So another question that came in, and I think I'm wondering if some of our team can maybe tag team on answering this. It's a big question, a complicated one, but some thoughts around how can we measure sort of the huge numbers of population behavioral changes to use family planning contraception sort of without acceptive use of survey methods. So are there other things besides survey methods that we can use to sort of look at these behavioral changes?
Well, Amanda, I can get us started. I think that, survey methods are certainly important, but they don't have to be conducted face-to-face. We've been using phone surveys and computer-assisted surveys now more and more that have their own limitations. There's also a new approach using crowdsourcing, app-based crowdsourcing that is, I think, really interesting, a really interesting way to try to get information, particularly from maybe harder to reach or specific populations that we know would have access to this kind of technology. And so even though the surveys have been the bread and butter, I think there are a lot of new tools that are providing interesting results. And of course, there's always limitations to think about, but there's new development that I think that we can consider as alternatives.
Great. Thanks, Martha.
I
Oh, go ahead, please.
just going to jump into and say, one of the things that we've thought about, first of all, is in terms of measuring some of these things to make sure that they are grounded in qualitative research and that you're reflecting the contextual nuances of specific audience groups or geographic areas. And then also one thing that we'd really like to see, I think, looking forward is maybe a separate module that can be included in some of the large household surveys that, if there's interest, can be incorporated that can address some of these behavioral determinant data that we've found, can give a lot of information and insight into how you should be tailoring your programs.
Thanks, Leanne. I'm seeing another question come in, and Senyukta, I think you're on the line. I might put you on the spot, but a question has come in around, can we use these kinds of SBC approaches to other programs like HIV testing?
Hi, everyone. Yes, certainly. In fact, there's a long history of social and behavior change approaches being used for HIV testing, encouraging both used within facilities or outside of facilities, and from large social promotion campaigns to encouraging testing to for protection, using testing as protection. So there is a long history of using SBC within the HIV field as well. I'm not sure if the person asking the question was looking for something more specific, but if they can expand on that, I can respond more specifically.
Great, thanks, Senyukta, and also happy to expand more on it in our follow-up if that's helpful, if someone's looking for something more specific. I see a bigger picture question, and we'll see. Happy for the team to jump in on this, but for service delivery projects that incorporate SBC as part of their work, what's the most important next step to incorporate some of these principles? And from my perspective, I don't think there's just one next step, but would be curious to hear the team's thoughts on what's next if folks want to be incorporating these principles.
So I can jump in, Amanda. I also invite Leanne to mention the work that we've just completed around taking a look at what methods and measures have been used to look at providers and provider behavior change. So in terms of combining SBC in the service delivery area, I think that one of the big picture learnings throughout breakthrough research has been just the lack of clear picture definitions of what constitutes provider behavior change programming and how is it measured, what approaches, what measures were being used. And so breakthrough research also conducted this review and trying to work as well in partnership with Breakthrough Action to come up with some of these definitions. And that is all work that it will be published soon through a supplement, a journal supplement. So I'm not sure what the next step is, but maybe taking that work in terms of the big picture review of what measures are used for provider behavior change, and then developing, working on those gaps.
Great, thanks, Martha. Leanne, I wonder, there's a question that's come in around how do you factor in self-reporting by respondents? For example, like respondents reporting that they're using contraception, which cannot be verified. And I know that there are different ways to deal with this, none of them perfect, but I know the how-to guide often outlines some pros and cons and ways to measure bias. So wonder if we might just quickly reflect on that.
Sure. I think, well, one way to sort of address this is to triangulate methods. And so to look at different sources, to try to see where these biases are coming from, and maybe try to not find the perfect answer, but at least get closer to understanding some of the strengths and limitations of a particular value. And I think, one thing that we've seen kind of working in areas where there are, it's more traditional beliefs among the non-users, is that they do still seem to be, sort of report on their, their negative beliefs. It's not all positive. I think the presentation of the slides shared by Nicole, which we worked together on, we did see those nuances, particularly when you bring together different types of behavioral determinant data. You can see, for example, she was showing that there's a younger group that splits off almost 20% actually, that splits off that has more positive behavioral determinant data, and you can see that reflected in their contraceptive use patterns as well. So I think, kind of triangulating different types of questions and triangulating different types of methods can kind of help you to hone in a bit better on those issues.
Great, thanks, Leanne. And I think in the interest of time, maybe a really quick response to this, but I think it's a really interesting question. Are there ways of segmenting audience based on social listening or social media monitoring data? Martha, I don't know if you want to just quickly jump in to see if you've seen anything like that as you've been going through the social media, social listening work.
I haven't, and that's a very intriguing question. I think one of the limitations that you have with social media data is the metadata that you can access in terms of individual characteristics of each poster. And so one of the things that you have to keep in mind with social listening is all of the privacy limitations, which are very important for individual users, but of course hinder your efforts to get to know more about each person who is posting. And so you can gain access to whether or not the person is registered as male or female within social media platforms and that kind of thing, but you don't really have access to age or any more information. And so I think that would be challenging to do, but I'll keep my eye out.
Great, thank you. And thank you so much, everyone, for such an engaging discussion and for being with us for this hour and a half. Please use this QR code to access an accompanying legacy resource document. This will also be shared as a link in the chat right now and by email as follow-up to this webinar. If there are any questions that came in that we didn't get to, we'll also answer those as follow-up to the webinar. And again, thanks so much for joining us today. Please do join us for the rest of our series. Join us again on March 21st to discuss SBC and the enabling environment for family planning. and on April 19th to discuss costing for family planning SBC, which has come up several times in today's webinar. So thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day. And we look forward to seeing you again on March 21st at our next webinar. Thank you so much.